All right, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Fantasy Files. And tonight we're talking about Led Zeppelin, one of the biggest, most iconic rock bands ever, in my opinion. Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, John Henry Bonham, of course. As a kid growing up in the 70s, they were bigger than life to me, like Black Sabbath, The Who, and some of the other bands you can mention from that time period. Playing great music, flying around in their Led Zeppelin jet. I never got to see them, but when the Song Remains the Same movie was released, I got to see that first run here at the Paramount Theater in Middletown, New York, and I probably went to see that like I don't know how many times. It was there for a week, and we went a whole bunch of times, me and my friends, and it was like going to a concert. We drink before we go in and everything else, and it was an event. Of course, then we got to see the film many more times at midnight shows. On tonight's show, I've asked my guests to tell us their three favorite albums by Led Zeppelin and why those albums and the songs on them are so special to them. And maybe you have some stories about some concerts or Led Zeppelin memories that they can share. And also joining me tonight from Stern PInball is Tim Sexton. He's the lead programmer on the brand new Led Zeppelin pinball machine. And he has also helped do programming, was the lead programmer, I believe the lead one again on the Black Knight Sword of Rage. That is also a rock, heavy metal related pinball machine, which he also did with designer Steve Ritchie, who's one of the greats in designing pinballs, who did AC/DC and Elvis. He was going to come on tonight, but he couldn't make it last minute. And the Black Knight had music in it, and Scott Ian from Anthrax, Brendan Small, Death Clock had a lot to do with that game. So this game is following in the tradition of great rock pinball themes from Stern PInball, like Metallica. They've done Iron Maiden, they've done Kiss, Aerosmith. And also joining us tonight is Basil Leblanc. He's a longtime friend and a Zepp fanatic, and designed his own custom Led Zeppelin pinball machine that you can see in the background. Pete Pardo's here, rock and roll journalist, and from Sea of Tranquility and the Hudson Valley Squares on Monday nights. We got David Blamp. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Blampied.
Got it.
He's the drummer of the Led Zeppelin tribute band Zepp Again from the New York tri-state area. Rick Labonte is joining us tonight. He's a rock music collector, a singer, songwriter, and another Zepp fanatic. And of course, one of my regulars tonight, our only regular can make it tonight because everybody was busy doing something else, is Robin Mason, bassist of the band Gruesome, Toccata, and she also manages some pretty cool rock bands, Exodus and Testament. So please welcome everyone to this new edition of the Rock Fantasy Files. Let's talk some Led Zeppelin. I'm going to start off tonight. I have a couple questions for my guests from Stern PInball to get started. How heavily was the band involved in the project? Did they or their management have any say in the choice of music in the game and or the art packages? Like, did they say, we want this album, or these songs you can use, those songs you can't use? Stuff like that.
So they never forced us into anything, but we did talk with them directly about getting an approved song list together for the game, how many songs there would be. And then also they had to approve everything that the Stern PInball team created. So that means all the art packages, all the display art, sound effects, that sort of stuff, everything went through everyone in the band, and they had suggestions and feedback with everything. They had notes and changes. So, they are the experts on what's Led Zeppelin, so we have to listen to their.
Of course. I know feedback. That some licenses are tougher than others. So, it's like you went with you guys, Stern obviously went with Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 3, and then their swan song for there's 3 editions of the game, which maybe Tim will just tell us quickly about for people to know anything about pinball. I'm a big pinball head, as is Basil and as is Tim, but of course, maybe we'll explain a little bit about that, because I've got the Led Zeppelin 3 here in the house. Eventually it'll be going to the store when the pandemic dies down a little. We can start having the games going in town more,
Yeah, at Stern, so we offer what we call cornerstone games. These are our big budget licensed titles we do every year. Recent titles include The Avengers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Stranger Things, Jurassic Park. Other games that Steve mentioned, like Metallica, AC/DC, all fall under this. And a cornerstone game comes in a variety of different models. So we have a limited edition collector's targeted model that's got every feature in the game. It's got mirrored back glass. It's got a special art package. custom colored rails and legs and stuff like that on the sides. It's got shaker motor installed, and then the playfield actually has more features than the Pro model, which is our
Mm-hmm.
location focused model. This is typically what we would expect someone like Steve to put in his location, although Steve sometimes goes and upgrades to the premium model for his shop.
I do, yeah. And it's more like the Pro is marketed more for bars and laundromats and game rooms and stuff like that, commercial.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a game that's designed to take money, be very reliable. It's going to hold up for a lot of play. Everything's very rigorously tested on it. This is your entry level price point. So this game's supposed to make an operator money,
Mm-hmm.
one quarter at a time, just like the good old days. That part of pinball has not changed, still takes coins and everything.
Yeah.
And then we also have in the middle, we've got a premium model, and this could be, it could be on your location. It could be at home if you're a big fan of Led Zeppelin and you want one game or something. The
Yeah.
premium model is probably the one for you, where this has extra playfield features. It has a different art package, different theming to it. And it doesn't have, everything. It doesn't have the limited edition, the signature, the mirrored backlash that the limited edition does, but it still has
Mm-hmm.
similar playfield level features.
Yep.
So we offered it in 3 different art packages. Now the Pro model has the Led Zeppelin 3, which I've got here.
Do you have a picture of it?
I have the
Oh, you
actual
got the
album.
Okay, yeah, Led Zeppelin 3.
So
He
if you
does
see
have
Led
the
Zeppelin
pinball
3,
sitting. What do you got? What do you got? The premium in your room, or you've got the Pro, or what have you got sitting there?
I've got the premium playfield. I have the Pro playfield in my closet right now.
Oh, okay.
And I swap them out for development. So I have a special thing.
Yeah.
I don't really have the games yet, but I'm going to get a premium game.
Okay.
The premium has
Cool.
your Led Zeppelin 1. That's your, of course, the
Of
Hindenburg
course. Yeah.
black and white with the orange Led Zeppelin text like that.
There you go.
And then with the limited edition, we went with the actual the Swan Song Records logo to
Yeah.
kind of represent all of Led Zeppelin with the big Icarus and the rainbow
Mhm.
background. It's very popular on like the merchandise that they sell with the t-shirts
Sure.
and everything. So
It's their label logo for the Swan Song label too.
yeah,
I
it kind of
believe.
represented everything Led Zeppelin.
So one more question, I guess, about the pinball. As I look around the web and everything, everyone's like, it doesn't have Stairway to Heaven. And like, was there a reason that song was omitted? Is it just too long of a song, or maybe that's not the right type of song to play with like a fast playing pinball machine, or don't you know why it wasn't picked?
It wasn't available, for the
Okay.
game. Although I don't necessarily know if it would have been a great pinball song to play to. We have
Mhm.
10 full-length songs in the game, and they're both all like fast, exciting
Yes.
songs. And Stairway is a ballad, and sometimes with
Yeah.
the pinball, you need that high
Made
energy
the right
stuff.
choice, Tim.
Yeah,
Yes.
Nothing against Stairway, but that's not a pinball song.
that's obviously a hugely popular song, and people want to know it's in the game. But
I guess, do you have the list of the songs that is in the game in front of you? I guess you probably heard some of them. Now, Tim, when I knew him, probably wasn't a Led Zeppelin fan and had to do a crash course when he got the job to not design, but to program this game. He really had to learn Zeppelin. I heard he did a video yesterday because he got some new kittens in the house, and I could hear Led Zeppelin playing in the background.
well, I always used to give Steve a hard time and saying like, oh, Stern's got to do, or someone's got to do some of these, new types of music. It can't all just be rock and roll. But I grew up, I was kind of fatigued from it because I grew up with my dad as a big rock and roll heavy metal fan. He loves Sabbath, he loves Ozzy, and he
That's
loves
true. That's right.
AC/DC, Led Zeppelin. He'll go see shows at the Garden all the time. You've probably been to shows where he's been there too at Madison Square
Yeah.
Garden.
Yeah.
So I listened to it all the time growing up. It was just part of my
Okay.
childhood. So when I listen to Led Zeppelin music, I'm like, I know it's Led Zeppelin music, and I've heard it a bunch of times. You can't really escape it. It's on the radio.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in stores. It's everywhere.
What is the list for the games? Do you have it in front of you?
Oh
or-
yeah. Well, it's printed on the back panel here. So in order, because we have a set list order, we have Good Times, Bad Times, Communication Breakdown, Whole Lot of Love, Immigrant Song, Kashmir, Black Dog, Ramble On, Rock and Roll, Trampled Underfoot, and The Song Remains the Same.
Great lineup of songs, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
So all of them you could pick whatever song you want to hear from the beginning of the game. You could pick it. This little jukebox comes up, flips the pages over, and you pick your song, and then you hear it, and that actually sets the rules of the game. So the different colors and different shots are lit up based on the song you pick. So every song has its own personality to it.
I've got the pro version. It is a little stripped down. It does remind me in some ways of some of the older games, but the shots and the flow on that game, it's just a pleasure to play. It doesn't look real crowded, but I really do want to get a hold of one of the premiums. I might even keep both, and when things get normal again, put one out at a brewery and keep one in the store. Like I got both versions of Iron Maiden. I mean, you can't go wrong with that one either. So, but I guess we could start with we'll come back for you at the end, Tim, and we'll get your favorite albums. But let's go to a newcomer tonight, first time ever on the show, Rick Labonte. Welcome. What can you tell us about your 3 favorite Led Zeppelin albums right now, buddy?
Well, I've been listening to Led Zeppelin for a long time, and it's part of my DNA. You can start talking about an album and then going in real time. And so it's kind of exciting that Jimmy Page is setting the remaster and the expansion, because I get to relive the experience. And, some of the songs that were mixed differently, you missed out from being buried, or some of the things just popped out a little bit. So I'm reliving the experience. But normally when I grab a Zeppelin album, I usually been grabbing like the live stuff, stuff that I had many hours for. But if you're gonna ask me to rank Led Zeppelin, the top 3, that was a struggle, but I always knew what my number 1 was gonna be. But just a real background, Led Zeppelin at that time, because I was born 1970, and I was just getting into him while John Bonham was still alive. I mean, I was enough to be disappointed when he passed away. We were all sad. The same thing we felt about John Lennon, but John Lennon, I was close because we talked about Beatles all through our childhood. And so Led Zeppelin was an interesting one because I just curious about the album cover. My uncle was living with us for a little while, and I grabbed Led Zeppelin 1, and just to seeing this, I thought that was really cool, right? And so that just kind of opened the door. But it was confusion because in Led Zeppelin 2, they had more than 4 guys on there. And I'm saying, who's in the band? So just because I asked questions, they said, put it on. Why don't you go check it out? And so I'm at 9, 10 years old. At this time, I'm pretty proud because I got a lot of the Beatles. I got a lot of the Who. I thought I had a pretty fancy album collection. So my uncle gave me Led Zeppelin 1 and 2.
Okay.
And with my own allowance, I ended up buying the rest of it. So by the time Bottom came past, I just got in through the outdoor. And I got the one weird album that had the different ink that everybody else had, a different view of the bar. So it was kind of neat, and I still have it today. I didn't realize how unique that was to get. So that was an interesting package, especially coming in a paper bag. So anyway, so a little bit about me. I do write songs. I'm in 2 bands. I'm in a band called The Formula, which we play covers from everything from Aerosmith, Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, whatever gets people moving on the floor too that could dance. Plus I play in blues. You can't be in the Zeppelin not and get into blues. So I have a blues band. I just put out the CD this month called The Blues Side. It's on Spotify and iTunes. And my second album that I'm currently working on, which should be about March or April. And interesting for Pete because he's friends with Davey Wimmer from Uriah Heep. He offered to play a couple bass lines for me and a couple tunes. Okay. And Joe Konas from The Guys is playing in a couple tracks. The Tea Party is a big band in Canada for us. It's like a Guess Who and Rush and everything. They're from our community, right in Windsor and LaSalle. And Jeff Burrows played about 4 songs on my album. So it's been really wonderful networking. Nice. And what we all have in common is that we love classic rock, we love Led Zeppelin, all that stuff. So going to the list, because I don't want to make a 2-hour show.
Yeah, we got to get to the top 3, my friend.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the invitation. I really do. I love the fact that you guys are preserving the lost art. Nobody talks about albums. They just talk about songs. Everything's on streaming. So when we can endorse the album, we got it. So going number 3, I have to go with Led Zeppelin 4. Believe me, this was tough. If I can pull those trick that Pete and them do, put couple albums each time, I would. But this one is a very special package because this was an album my dad bought for me. Most of it I bought on my own, but my dad bought this, and it was really special because he wanted to show it cool because he was really the Beach Boys, Beatles, the Four Seasons, and I loved all that. Elvis, all that. I was brought up like the history of rock and roll. When we were 10, and I learned the 50s, the 60s. By the time I got to the 80s, I was catching up to the 70s. But my dad shared those experiences with me. I mean, he was around 21 when this was out. And now it's 50 years old, and interesting. But Led Zeppelin 4, obviously, for the many reasons everybody give, it's just a dynamic album. It has all the characteristics what make this band fantastic, and sonically, it's a great sounding album. Do I need to hear a lot of these songs like over? I like to put them on shuffle now just to be surprised a little bit, because the songs so much. But I did like the remaster expanded version. That was really nice.
Awesome.
Now, so number 2, got to be Led Zeppelin 2. That was pretty. That was important for me, and it's really difficult because, like I've always said this. I mean, Jimmy Page can pass win and it sound musical notes. I'm not going to question about the guy's running order, but I always felt that albums like this could have been this much more stronger if the crunge was replaced with House of the Holy. This might have beat this, or if you take Zeppelin 3, get rid of I like these songs, don't get me wrong, they could all feature in Coda, but hey, what can I do could have been a nice on Led Zeppelin 3 instead of Hats Off for sure. But that's what makes these a little easier for me to finally pick my 3. And Led Zeppelin 2 is that album. It's very special to me, especially when it was my curiosity of this album, where they call it the bomber, the brown bomber jacket, is why I started collecting.
What do you got for number 1 there, Rick?
Number 1 has to do with anytime you get more Zeppelin, it's going to be better automatically. But this is the complete package. And I would argue maybe even more, because they exercised a little bit of the Indian music and 4-stick, but with Kashmir, they went all the way out. They got psychedelic music in there when you think about psychedelia. When you talk about In the Light, one of my favorite tunes, it has all the elements, hard rock, spookiness, eerie music at the same time, uplifting, make you a breath of fresh air. And so I think this album really says it all, if not a little bit more, because they had more songs to do that. And I love the package. I think that was fascinating. The mystery of what happened behind the closed doors, what they're happening. And one of the interesting stories I learned is that one of the pictures you start looking there, they're in a drag, they're all dressed up in makeup. And the story goes is that while groupies were painting their faces, and they said, they thought it would just be pictures just for them, right? But ultimately, it was such a good laugh, they put it on the record because George Harrison come to the lobby of the hotel that they were there, and surprise visit. So they said, let's stay all dressed up and go down there and surprise George Harrison. And they go down to the lobby. Little did they know, Stevie Wonder accompany him, and being blind, he doesn't know what everybody's laughing about, so they're really embarrassed because they wanted a shock value, but they made somebody a little uncomfortable who didn't know what was the joke all about. But anyway, Physical Graffiti, it rocks. It gives you everything that Zeppelin is famous for, and if I could go on a time machine, this is the tour I would like to see. Perhaps 72 is one of the finest hours of their music, but this is the full the full landscape of their music.
Thank you, Rick. Very nice. Thanks for coming on. I guess I'm going to go next to Robin. You ready, Robin? One of my regulars from every week, and glad to have you back on, and thanks for coming on tonight.
So I am not going to be able to go as in-depth as Rick just did.
That's fine.
At
you
all.
Don't know about Stevie Wonder being in the lobby or nothing?
I love Stevie Wonder, so I really enjoyed that story.
Cool.
But yeah, like my introduction to Led Zeppelin was really like I had older cousins that, listened to that type of music. But as I mean, they were always around Zeppelin, like it was like it was a thing. They were everywhere. But for me, I was more into like heavier, I think, rock stuff until like my best friend, my sister, when we were like younger teenagers, like Led Zeppelin was her favorite band. And she would make me sit in the room and listen to Led Zeppelin in like order front to back. And I would have to memorize every single song title on every album every day. Like that was like, she wouldn't let me like leave the house until that. So that's like my memory, you know, mostly of Led Zeppelin. And, you know, going through this, I didn't actually pick my top 3 albums. I picked songs more or less because, I mean, there's so many Led Zeppelin songs that you constantly hear, you know, that after a while you're just like, you know, I want to hear other songs possibly. But I mean, even like when I'm looking at my list, I did, you know, the majority, and I was like, wow, you know, there's still songs that they play a lot, but I still really, I think they're like my favorites, like Since I've Been Loving You. I love that song. I think it's like wonderful. The
Great
Song
stuff.
Remains the Same is another great one. Man, I don't know. I wrote Nobody's Fault But Mine. That's another great one. That, and Battle of Evermore was another great one. It was like
that song.
The one that like I really like that I don't think gets a lot of attention is The Ocean. Like I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
Yeah. Pete's shaking his head,
So and then, you know, the scream on the beginning of Immigrant Song is just classic and is it's just I think it's way before its time, and a lot of newer metal bands kind of emanated that scream. So I mean, it's just like when it comes out, you're just like, you know, it's pretty.
It's a,
you know,
that's
brutal. And I'm just like, and I'm thinking back, and like I'm still annoyed about Fast Times at Ridgemont High quoting the wrong Led Zeppelin song with the album. That still bothers me to this day from then. And I really wish they would, you know, go back and fix that, but obviously that's
Rick
not
Labonte does not know his Led Zeppelin, right?
No, it's like I find it very annoying from day one. It just really bothered me. And yeah, that's about it. Like I'm definitely not going to be in depth as you guys.
That's fine.
I'm fascinated by hearing like the stories and what Led Zeppelin means to everybody. Like I appreciated them, and like I said, I knew most of it because I had to listen to it, and I used to. If you quizzed me back in the '80s, I could probably tell you every song back to back to back to back.
It's one of the few bands that you have not.
I can't do that now.
So it's one of the few bands that you have not toured with.
Yeah, I never toured with them.
Or sold
I
t-shirts.
never actually saw them, and you know, it's like I saw Kingdom Come, which is not them, but you know, that was another band.
Yeah, they pretended that, and they acted like they'd never heard of them before, which is
that was another. I was gonna say they just, that band was. I'm gonna say a fail.
Oh, what do you mean Led Zeppelin? We've never heard of them. Do we sound like them?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, come on, no, but yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Robin.
Yeah, that's my stuff. I'll sit back, and if I have a question, I might scream at.
Yeah, you can hop in and yell at us. I guess next I'm gonna bring on someone else that's brand new to the show. If Pete doesn't mind, I'll make him go last right now. He does that to me some Mondays, so. David from Zepp Again, a band that I've had the pleasure of hanging out with and seeing so many times here in Middletown when Brian's Backyard Barbecue was around. I've seen you maybe at the Chance too or somewhere. I know I've seen you somewhere else, but how did you get into playing the drums in this great tribute band? And maybe tell us that story, and then of course, you know, let us know what your favorite stuff is, songs or albums or whatever you'd like to talk about. Thanks for coming on.
Well, I don't have any shows to promote right now because of COVID.
Well, obviously, yeah.
But I do want to say, I heard you mention Since I've Been Loving You and Nobody's Fault. We do really killer versions of those songs. So if you get a chance to come out, those are actually 2 songs that I really love to play. It's satisfying to play those songs. As far as albums go, I'm going to just really quick start by talking about an album that's not on my list. that's the first one. And I think what a lot of time gets overlooked is that the time period between when they first got together and played and rehearsed in London for the very first time and the release of that album was like 6 months, right? So they got together in the fall of '68, and the first album was released in '69. So it's you know, the album's got covers on it, you know, and I think that there's a lot of discussion about, you know, the Willie Dixon stuff and, you know, the Joan Baez song, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, that they get a lot of slack for. But I think what people don't consider is at that time period, especially in England, was that all these bands were cover bands. The Rolling Stones were a cover band, and you know they were all doing blues, and they were all that was sort of the camp that was popular. You know what I mean? So and the other thing too, that the first album was recorded in 36 hours, which is insane. You know what I mean? That something that took less than 40 hours is still being talked about now. You know. And you know, it's the other thing too about that album is it's right out of the gate. You can feel the energy on the album. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, good times, bad times, communication breakdown, and it's, you know, and it's also, you know, artistically diverse. There's acoustic numbers on it. So, but and as far as my top three, you know, what child don't you feed tonight? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you ask me this question tomorrow, it's going to be completely different because my mood is going to be different. I'm very moody, but I am. I don't have props. All I have is a gong. So I don't
can
have
hold it up. I can hold up an album for you if you need. I got it in front of me.
No, the
Nobody
gong
got
is
the
pretty
gong.
Yeah, the gong is amazing. So
Yeah, hit the gong.
So number three would have to be Led Zeppelin 4. Because tonight it would have to be Led Zeppelin 4 because it's an epic album, and you know, just based on When the Levee Breaks alone, you know, I mean, that is just, you know, it's defining. You know what I mean? That's is, you know, the harp, Robert playing the harp on that. I mean, it's solid. The one thing about Led Zeppelin 4 is it's actually kind of a dark album. It's a bit it's got like a darkness to it. I can't really explain it that well, but you know, Black Dog. I mean, it's actually not my Led Zeppelin 4 is not my favorite version of Black Dog. My favorite version of Black Dog is How the West Was Born. So you know, Bonham was, you know, most famous for playing the Ludwig Vista lights, which he used, I believe, on that, because it was like 73 when they recorded that, and he was using the Ludwig Vista lights. But I think actually the drum sound on thank you, Rick. I think the drum sound on How the West Was Won is better than The Song Remains the Same. It is just blistering hot drums up front where it needs to be, you know. And the same thing with like the Albert Hall recordings when he was playing when Bonham was playing the Maple kit. You know, if you go on YouTube and you can listen to like the version, you know, well, you can listen to Moby Dick from the Royal Albert Hall, but you can, you know, even just I'm Gonna Quit You, Baby is blistering, man. He is on that drum part, like, you know, I mean, you know, the solo and everything. So anyway, I'm gonna have to go with number three being Led Zeppelin 4. Kind of divergent. Number two is Physical Graffiti. Much for the same reason that Rick was saying. It's a large landscape of music. It's diverse, and it really encompasses all that. Not all that they did, but like it's a broader painting. It's a larger landscape. And you know, again, the mood changes on the album from In the Light, you know, to Kashmir, to the numbers, you know. And number one was actually, I couldn't decide really. So I was going to say Houses of Holy because, you know, I'm a big fan of prog rock, you know. I really think the Houses of Holy, the song remains the same, and you know, Dancing Days and alternative. Well, they did a lot of alternative tunings, but I think if you put a gun to my head right now, I'd probably say Led Zeppelin too, because as my absolute favorite, because
okay,
you know, it's just again, it's the circumstances behind that, the way that the album is recorded. Studios all over America. I'm sure if it was Olympic Studios or wherever they mastered it, where they finished engineering it. You know, it's just, again, it's just like it's such a quintessential sound in the album. Actually, my list is really close to Rick's, right?
Yeah.
So I'd have to say, you know, thank you. You know. Yeah, it's just a great album. So
yeah,
that would be it. I also got a list of songs that are the most fun to play in drums.
I was going to ask what songs you really enjoy playing in the band. That was one of my questions. What is it?
Yeah, with beyond a doubt, I think opening a show with the song remains the same is, you know, and what we do is we link 3-4 songs together.
Yeah.
In the beginning. But opening the show with the song remains the same. It's a gut punch. The song is just, you know, if you're not amped up by that, then check your pulse.
Yeah.
But the song remains the same is also a really fun song to play. It really is, because it's got a lot of intricate parts. You know, it changes. It's got great dynamics in it, and it rocks. It just rocks. The second one that's fun to play on drums, although I get anxiety attacks every time it's on a set list, is Achilles' Last Stand.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there's actually a drum fill like about at the 2-minute mark, which you know, when you're playing, it's like, oh, fuck, here it comes. You know, so it's when it goes well, it goes well. You know what I mean? And there's actually a version of it on YouTube from Nebworth late. I don't remember. I think it may have been 79.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, 79. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That version is just like any doubt in anyone's mind of the musicianship of what was going on in that band. Just watch the live version of Achilles' Last Stand, and it's just like, I don't know, it doesn't have how it gets any better than that, you know, in rock and roll. But, Royal Orleans off of Presence is a really fun song to play on drums. You know what I mean? You know, it's a blast. It's not a hard song. I just like the song. It's got a good drum. Of course, Ramble On is another good one for the same reasons. You know, it's got a lot of dynamics. It's got a lot of space for kind of experimental drum riffs, you know. That I'll add stuff to it, you know what I mean? That's one good thing about playing the Zeppelin tribute band is that if you screw up, you say, oh, that was the 77 version. So, but hands down, my favorite Zeppelin song to play on drums, without a doubt, is the Wanton song from Physical Graffiti. That song is just, you know, I dig my teeth into that song, and I take it down like a gazelle in Africa. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just the bass drum and snare drum combinations in that, and the fact that it's just a really cool song. Actually, when I saw Page and Plant on their first tour, when they did their first album together, was they opened the show with the Wanton song. So
nice,
awesome, you know, to see it live. The other thing is that they you know, when they do it live, they tend to put, you know, you watch different versions of it, and they're playing it at different speeds. You know, when Page and Plant did it, they sped it up a bit. You know what I mean? And then when he did it with the Black Crowes, you know, they kind of brought it back down tempo-wise, closer to the album. and I think it's got more bite to it at the right tempo. You know what I mean? It's just great. It's a great the Wanton song, without a doubt. My top favorite song to play.
I would have thought that would be a great pinball tune, right? Dan, 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 dan.
Yeah.
And that would have worked too. But
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
better
Jimmy,
add another song to the game, man.
but Jimmy Page and Robert Plant played the Immigrant song intro, then go into the Wonton song live.
There you go.
That's why the tempo got changed a little bit, but right on.
You know, I'm not a pinball guy. I'm not a pinball designer or anything, but if it were me picking songs for a Led Zeppelin, the top of the list would be Bonzo's Mantra for a pinball machine. That song's just, I mean, it's all Bonham, but
yeah.
What's wrong with that?
You're slightly partial to the drummers.
I'm a little biased.
So Dave, who's in Zepp Again right now for our viewers? I know you have Mike Sanders, who was in Toxic for a while.
Yeah.
As vocals, right?
Yeah. Mike Sanders. Kevin Slover plays guitar. And actually, Kevin and I go back a long time. We've been playing together in various different groups and bands for a long time. And just working with Kevin, I'm actually working with all those guys is great because having your friends that are in a band, like everybody that you get along with, that you're friends with.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're friends first, and then we just all happen to play, you know, in a Zeppelin tribute band. So, it's special when it's like, you know what I mean? So, you know, they've always got your back, you know. And then we have a remarkably talented bassist, and he also plays keys, which is not easy to find.
Yeah.
Find somebody that can do all those parts. And he plays mandolin too, so we're able to do a lot of acoustic stuff on our sets. Steve Schnaper plays bass.
Nice. One of the guys in your band does double duty with Limelight, the Rush tribute.
Yes, that's Steve.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, he is. But this thing is like, you know, three very talented musicians in me.
Mm-hmm. Hey.
You know, but you know, actually, the first time I saw Kevin play, he was opening for. He was in a band opening for 38 Special at the Orange County Speedway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was in the audience, right? And I seen him play, and I was like, I don't know who that guy is, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to call him, because that dude is definitely from the same mold as me and Sherry Shed.
Nice.
You know, whatever it is, 25 years later or so, you know, we're still kicking it, man.
Yeah. How many years has Zepp Again been together? You just said.
Oh my God, 7.
7. Okay, cool.
6 or 7. You know.
I've seen you quite a few times, and I mean, it was a few years ago. It was probably around 2015. You were on Brian's Barbecue, which is on one of our music venues in Middletown here. It's been closed for a couple of years already, and you used to play there every few months, and we'd always make sure we could hit those dates. And
absolutely,
always a packed house, and always was a great night. You know, reliving the Zeppelin music.
Yeah, we had
played, well done. You know,
we had some really good nights there. You know, the one thing about Brian's at that location, and it's a shame that it's closed, but it's almost like a what's the club in England, like the Ronnie Lane? Is that what it's called?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Ronnie Scott's.
Is that what it is?
Ronnie Scott's.
Oh, Ronnie Scott's. Thank you. It's almost got that kind of vibe to it. You know what I mean? With the table set up, and you know.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a good sounding room. You don't think when you walk in there, it's like, oh my God, you know.
I think Pete Pardo should buy it, because he could have the Sea of Tranquility. We could do Hudson Valley Squares there live on Monday, and you could have bands play all week.
Hey,
that's a lot.
Go for it, man.
I will say, I will second the fact that Zepp Again is a really great tribute band. I've seen you guys a number of times, and I went to school with Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin says hi, by the way.
Tell him what's up, Kev. I haven't talked to him in a bit. And his girlfriend, Laurel, I grew up with. I know her like almost 50 years. So that's kind of all in the family here.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Excellent, excellent. I guess we'll move over to Mr. Basil Leblanc, all the way from the Rocky Mountain High in Colorado, and you've got your Zeppelin pinball. And Basil's been a friend of mine for I don't know how many years, probably 40 or something. It's been a while. He used to live in town around here, and he's always been this huge Zeppelin guy. He's probably got, we're not supposed to talk about bootlegs. I didn't sell him any because I don't sell them, but he's got a million bootlegs. He's got everything. He's got, he's just a Zeppelin guy, and he took an Evel Knievel pinball machine, which was a famous pinball machine in the 70s, of course. And he did and had some people work on it. And what is that? The Song Remains the Same art on it, correct?
Yeah, I was actually going to call it The Song Remains the Same when I first started, but then I decided to just call it Led Zeppelin. I kind of lifted their concert poster for a back glass. It lends itself to pinball really well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have some friends that are real talented programming and artists, and they helped me create a game. We reprogrammed it so it plays Led Zeppelin. It doesn't play Evel Knievel anymore.
Okay. Now, does it play Led Zeppelin and chimes?
Right. We tuned 2 extra chime bars, so now it has 6 chimes, and we play 6 songs, little bits of songs on the on the game. It plays Moby Dick when you go into the saucer. It plays Jimmy's part of Moby Dick, which is the Bonzo feature.
Yeah. So
every time it goes in the saucer, it plays that. When you start your game, it plays Black Dog. On Game Over, it plays Heartbreaker. So I like to, put appropriate songs in appropriate places. When you put a coin in, it plays a Whole Lot of Love.
Cool.
And there's a special feature in there that we came up with one night while we were just sitting here, having drinks and playing. Instead of an extra ball, my game does a ramble on.
Oh, I thought you were going to say no quarter.
No, it no, it does a ramble on when you instead of resetting the game back to and collecting your bonus when you collect your ramble on, it just gives you the ball back and all your progress is saved.
So Tim's taking notes for something he's going to add into the programming of the next update. I'm looking at him right now. See him petting the cat, and he's writing some notes. I see him.
Well, in our game, when you earn the extra ball, it does play Ramble On Shoot Again. It goes da na 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 na.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, we really had a lot of fun making it, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy with it. It came out the way I wanted it to.
You've had that out and about at some of the conventions out west there too, right?
We only took it to the Pinball Showdown here in Denver.
Okay.
The only place it's been. It did win Best of Show, and while we were there, Barry Ausler was there. He's a pretty awesome guy. Designed a lot of cool pinball machines. He played a couple games on it, and then he had me summoned from somewhere at the show to come and find him to talk to me about it. And we were talking about it earlier. It was his dream theme as well, and he said he had multiple times tried to get the rights to make one, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Like, I know that John Borg was another person that mentioned he wanted to do it, and Steve ended up with it. But it seems like there's a lot of people in the pinball industry that want to do a Zeppelin, and probably a lot of them want to do have favorite bands that they'd like to do, of course. So it's pretty normal, I'd say. So what's your 3 favorite Led Zeppelin records there, Basil?
So my number 3 would be the Unnamed album, which when came out, it was an amazing album. It had didn't say who it was on there.
Yeah.
When this album came out, there was no way to tell who the band was, and they did it on purpose to.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't have a name on the side. It has a name on the front, nothing on the back.
Unnamed album.
Yep. They wanted to dispel all the hype that they got criticized in the beginning, saying that, oh, they got the excellent advancement for the album. It's all hype. And so they say, yeah, we can let the music sell itself. And that's amazing. Even House of the Holy, they didn't put the label on House of the Holy.
True, true.
Yeah. So when I first got turned on to Led Zeppelin, I still remember it. It was about 1976. I was out riding dirt bikes with my friend, my neighbor, and we got tired. We went over to his house to get something to drink, and we went in the house, and he dropped the needle on that Zoso album, and
yeah,
Black Dog just blew my mind, and I was never the same again. So yeah, Black Dog's on there. The Levy, yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable, that album.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool.
My second favorite album would be the second album. It's
a good choice for number 2.
Oh man,
for a few of us tonight.
First time I ever heard Moby Dick, I thought the guy can't be human. You know, to have the stamina to do that. You know, and Ramble On's on there, and Whole Lot of Love's on there.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. The collection of songs on there is just, and it's all about, I don't know, there's driving, hard, dark stuff, and then there's light stuff as well, you know. It's crazy. All their albums are so different.
True.
So my 3 favorite albums are the same as Rick. My first my first
copycat
is this. This album is just
great mind think alike. It's great. We appreciate it.
I mean, it's really hard to pick because
I
mean, Presence is awesome. It's
just, no one's mentioned Presence yet tonight, and that's a great album also.
Presence is just unbelievable. I was hard pressed. Sometimes Presence is my favorite album, but today I guess Physical Graffiti is.
I like what Dave said about that earlier. And Pete, I don't think we've ever used that in any of your ranking shows. What child are you going to feed tonight? I love that. That was something that we're going to pick. We might copy from that one. Every night we do that. We're like, how are we going to, like, what's the worst Testament album we were doing last night? And like, what's the worst, what's the best? And it's hard to pick out. I love how Dave put that in words.
Well, you know, just kind of touching on the not naming albums. I think probably the all-time best was Joe Walsh's "You Bought It, You Name It" album. You know, if you
go. Cool.
Also, what's really cool with this, In Through the Outdoor, does everybody know that there's 6 different album covers? 6
Rick has to know.
Album covers? It's amazing.
It is.
And they change color.
What a marketing ploy, right?
Wow, Tim.
And the inner sleeves, when you make them wet, they change from black and white to color.
And I come into this thinking that Tim's just this young kid. He knows a little bit about Zeppelin. He knows a lot about Zeppelin. Not that he got hired to do this game, but like he said, there's history with his parents. And he knows a lot about Zepp, so it's very cool.
It is
very cool. Very cool, Basil. Anything more to add from your end? And I'm going to head over to Mr. Pardo because we've been making him wait very long, and he's probably getting restless. He's got fire there. He's gonna get nasty with it in a minute. Throw it at this. I've never seen Pete with candlelight. Is that like the Zeppelin thing tonight?
Well, it's like I was taping an episode of the Monsters Den before this, and I always have the candle
Oh,
during the Monsters show. And I figured, you know what? What's a little fire for our Zeppelin show?
yes.
Right on.
It's a good campfire song. And
Yeah.
you got your Dracula shirt on. I can see that already.
Yes, I'm in monster garb tonight. So, I was going to put on some Zeppelin stuff, but I figured, it's been a long day. So,
Who shirt.
But he has the Les Paul over his shoulder. Jimmy's right
yeah,
there.
I mean, that's inspired by Jimmy right there.
Yeah, right there.
So
Yeah.
it's my standard. So it's, always love when Jimmy played his. So.
Me too.
So my favorite 3 Zeppelin albums. Well, it's funny because I do like ranking albums for a living. It seems like I'm always
Yes, you do.
ranking albums, catalogs of bands of all different genres or what have you. And especially when it's a band that you have a lot of history with. A lot of times, what I tend to do is like I say to myself, "All right, well, let me go back in time. How would I have ranked these albums, or what would have been my 3 favorites in this case back, 30 or 40 years ago?" And then I say, all right, well, what are my 3 favorites like of the last decade or two? Because there are times where albums you really loved when you were a kid, sometimes your taste changed a little bit. And like, for instance, back in 1980, I didn't like Zeppelin 3 at all. I was like, I love the heavy stuff, but the rest of it, all this folky acoustic stuff, I got no use for it. And that was easily my least favorite Zeppelin album back all those years ago. Well, you know what? I like Zeppelin 3 a lot now. It's like I've grown to really appreciate that album and all the little nuances it has. The heavy songs are great. It's got, Since I've Been Loving You, the best blues song they ever did. And the acoustic stuff is great as well. But I think for me, when I first became a Zeppelin fan in the late 70s, I was really gravitated towards those first 2 albums. It's like, I think everybody was. It's just like, when you listen to when you became a Sabbath fan, it was Black Sabbath and Paranoid, right? It's what you listened to. It's what you loved, Same thing with Maiden, same thing with Judas Priest. All that stuff. Exactly. But I found that starting with like maybe about like the mid 80s, I started really to gravitate towards a couple of other albums besides for those first 2. So, and my number 3 is going to be Houses of the Holy, which I think, kind of like what Dave said, this is a really eclectic album. There's a lot of different things going on here. And that's one of the things I loved about like that kind of mid-period Zeppelin, is that they were really experimenting with all sorts of different types of styles and things. And there's everything on this album. There's the big heavy rock, there's the bluesy stuff, there's those kind of playful poppy songs. You got the little bit of reggae, you got the little bit of funk, you got the, the lovely Rain song, you've got, No Quarter, which is one of my favorite songs by them. You got great rock, the song remains the same, good hard rock stuff. It's just, it has a little bit of everything. And, who doesn't love this weird ass cover with the, weird naked children?
I'll tell you who doesn't like it.
Bizarre, but it's like, but it kind of works, right? It's like, I tell the story all the time. It's like most people just in a bizarre way always really love this album cover because of the colors and the real mysterious of the kids. And I remember like a bunch of years ago, I really wanted to get a House of the Holy t-shirt. And I remember I was looking at it online and my wife was like, well, why would you buy a t-shirt with a bunch of weird looking half naked kids?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because it's an album cover. It's a legendary album cover, right?
Yes.
So but that's my number 3. Number 2 has got to be the 4th album. Despite the fact that there's a couple songs on here I probably don't need to hear much at all anymore. Specifically rock and roll. I'm completely burnt out on rock and roll, but Black Dog still kicks major ass. When the Levee Breaks is still amazing. Four Sticks is great. Battle of Evermore is enchanting. Stairway, when I hear it once a year, I love it. I don't need to hear it a lot more than that. And it's, we already talked about the great album cover and how mysterious it is. But, I'm going to echo a couple of the folks here. Man, this is their magnum opus. One of the best double albums of all time. I've talked to people over the years who say that this should have been a single album. There's way too much filler on it. I don't hear that at all. I like everything that's on here. It's got, even more so than House of the Holy, it has everything that made this band so great. Some of my favorite songs are on here. The Rover is my favorite Zeppelin song of all time. Trampled Underfoot, Custard Pie, In My Time of Dying, Kashmir, Wanton Song. I mean, there's so much great. Night Flight, another kick-ass song. So many great tunes on here. And I think as a double album, even though there's a chunk of it that are things that were not used on other albums, if all the bands in the world had quality like this as the songs that didn't make the cut on other albums, the world would be a much different place, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right on.
there you have it.
Thank you, Pete. That was really cool. And I guess we got to go back to Tim. We didn't get your 3 favorite albums. We talked all about the pinball machines. Let's see what your 3 favorite are as we're starting to wrap up this episode and do our final statement or closing statement. I got to get this right. It's my show, and I still don't know what I'm doing. I've only had like 1 beer, so.
As I was showing here, my new guest Wizard showed up in my lap. So
Is that Wizard?
this is my new cat Wizard. I got her
Is it
last
named
week.
after? Is that named after the Bally Wizard?
It's named after she's a pinball wizard.
All right, cool.
See, she knows. So I didn't have the same experience with the albums as you guys because I'm a bit younger, I think, than most of the people on here. So
Maybe
I
a
was
little.
not really around in a time where you could go get a vinyl album, and it was a lot more radio and CDs, I guess, but then pretty much quickly digital and stuff like that. So you hear songs one at a time. So a lot of my albums are just kind of based on the songs I like, my favorite Zeppelin songs.
Okay, so you can give us your favorite songs if you'd rather.
No, I'll do it. So
Okay.
I will say my third favorite album is Led Zeppelin 1 because
Cool.
you've got Good Times, Bad Times, and Communication Breakdown, and How Many More Times, Maybe I'm Gonna Leave You. Bunch of great songs on there. And I think that really just starts off strong, like knowing it's on the first album, listening to them back as albums. You're like, wow, Zeppelin started off hot with what they had there. My number 2, which has been many people's number 1 tonight, is Physical Graffiti, and I have the same props as everyone else. Now, what's cool about working on the game, I wanted to show this before I get to my number 1. This is kind of like the holy the Bible of Led Zeppelin. This is the tabs for every studio recording they had, the guitar tabs.
Yeah.
And I actually used this in development of the game because we went through in every single section and we charted it out so the timing of the lights and everything works with the songs exactly as they're written. So following along with the audio and then actually matching it up so the game knows how to keep it in sync. Because this isn't done to a metronome. This is, they're just playing along and the tempo can drift and shift, and they do some crazy time signature stuff, especially in like Black Dog. So this has been a lifesaver, and it really helped understand every Zeppelin song here. What did I get? Stairway to Heaven right away.
Nice.
Open it up, you get everything. My number 1 album, because it has my top 2 favorite Led Zeppelin songs on it, which are When the Levee Breaks and The Battle of Evermore, are my top 2 favorite Zeppelin songs. Led Zeppelin, Untitled, Led Zeppelin 4, the 4 symbols, the deal. I had this on vinyl, but I gave it to our artist because he had to reference The Hermit to put it on the arrows all over the playfield. So I don't have it anymore. He took it from me. Stephen Jensen, he did a great job with all the art packages. So those are my top 3 Led Zeppelin albums of all time. But, they can change with your mood because they do have different moods. So those are the ones I went with just based on which ones have my favorite songs. And
so
Physical Graffiti has a bunch, but I think When the Levee Breaks and Battle of Evermore are the songs I don't get sick of ever.
I love Battle of Evermore. It's one of the coolest vibes, and we can't talk about it in some states, but it's like you want to roll one up when that one's on. I think especially back in the day. It's like, like when I grew up, thinking about Zeppelin, it's like you had that clique in high school, because I'm not old. Zeppelin was big in high school because I'm 60 years old now. And you'd have that clique in high school. Those kids were kind of like deadheads, kind of like hippies. But they liked the harder edge, and they liked Zeppelin, and they kind of liked Sabbath, and it was a very cool vibe at the time. And I'll say the same thing about later on, a few years later, with Van Halen. Those were like the cool kids. They listened to Zeppelin, they listened to Van Halen back in those cliques back in high school, I think. But So Tim, how do we find out about these great Stern pinball machines? I guess we go to sternpinball.com.
SternPinball.com, that is your platform for everything. You can sign up for code updates. You can sign up for Stern Insider. The free version gets you on our email list where you get our newsletter every month. We recap you in the Stern of the Union of what's going on. Also shows you where you can find a dealer, find a distributor. So if you're actually looking to buy a game or even rent a game, because a lot of people are doing game rentals now, which is a cool new business model that's sort of emerged out of the pandemic. A lot of people were going out to the bars and the locations and playing, and now it's like, well, I can get a new game for a month, play it constantly, and then kind of learn it all. And that's, some people have really gravitated to that model. And you can get a different game every month if you want to keep doing that. Some people like holding on to them. So,
and I mean, during this pandemic, pinball machines, the prices have been going through the roof on the older ones, and I don't know if you guys can even keep up with the manufacturing right now. It seems like they're in high demand right now. Brand new ones and pre-owned are just going through the roof, right, Tim?
Oh yeah, our factory's been, trying to keep up as much as they can. We have to change it so we're socially distant, and they got a lot of, like, every station has barriers between it and there's spacing and things. So that, you would think that would slow us down, but they've been going super fast despite all the safety precautions, and we're still not caught up. Every day I go in, any day I've got into the factory, normally we have like a big stack of pinball machines waiting to go out. There's just the next shipment. That's it.
Okay.
Because as soon as they're made, a truck pulls up, unless we have another Chicago snowstorm that we've been having. And they load them on the trucks, and then out they go, and then we make another batch of them, and then on another truck, and out they go. But we've shipped now all the game models. We did pros, limited editions, and now premiums have started shipping. And we'll keep making all the games. The other games that are back ordered, we're going to keep making them. So yeah, call your distributor, dealer nearby. And if you want a game or you want to know how to get a rental game or where to even play one, sternpinball.com can show you where it is on location, places that are open now.
Sure. I was hearing that New York, the arcades are officially opening this weekend. I heard that Round One, which is a big chain that's in the mall, I don't think they have pinballs at all. Maybe some do, but they're supposed, I guess this weekend it's a go ahead. So, of course, Rock Fantasy, we've got a bunch of pinballs, and they're on display because we do buy and sell them too. And I use pinballs.com for buying a lot of my new games. But so if you're in the Northeast, give Mike Dodonna a call at pinballs.com. Take a look, or look at Stern Pinball, and hopefully we can sell a few pinball machines with this show tonight. Because if you're a Zeppelin collector, like I think Rick is slightly a collector, and a lot of guys are going to want to have this. Even if they have one pinball, if you're a Zeppelin guy, you're going to want this, or So, well, thanks for coming on tonight, Tim, and we're going to kind of close this up tonight, and we'll go around and. Let's see, Rick, do you want to do something real quick? You said a couple of books on the show. Maybe if you can do them out in a couple of minutes.
Sure. First of all, I just want to say thanks. Nice to meet you all. I appreciate being on here and talking about one of my favorite bands of all time. It's like,
excellent.
A great way to spend an evening. I just want to say I've been Led Zeppelin had an impact, just like I hear from everybody. And it was nice to meet a musician that played Zeppelin. I do at home too. We play Good Times, Bad Times, What Is, What Should Never Be, The Ocean, The Rover. We played quite a bit of that, Bring It On Home.
Nice.
But if it wasn't for Zeppelin, I wouldn't have pushed the envelope about a lot of things to learn. Like I learned to play the harmonica because nobody's fault but mine, and Bring It On Home. And then, Roger Daltrey did, and Steven Tyler did. Well, Robert Plant doing it, I got to do it too. So, so they were big role models. And I seen every show that I was available that I can, because I live right across Detroit. And what happens in Toronto, I might go 4 hours or I go 2 hours, depending on where the venue is. But I've seen Robert Plant every time since Now and Then, 1988 on. I haven't missed a tour. When Page and Plant came down, I seen them every time, and it was great because they changed the set list every time, so it was excellent for the most part. I've seen Jimmy Page doing the Outriders tour with Jason Bottom, and then I saw Jimmy Page with the Black Crowes, like you did. That was a great show, and I got to meet Jason Bottom one time he was doing a tour just after that
Nice.
celebration day. He was doing tour with Heart, and they call it the Heartbreaker Tour. And
Okay.
you know what they did for
Yeah,
honoring Led Zeppelin at the Kennedy thing. Well, not only did I meet Jason, he gave me his poster, which is only like, it says 600 edition, and he personally signed it. And he let me hang around while everybody meeting, because we became fast friends, like real quick, like just talking a lot. And he was just a great guy. And I told him how much I appreciate the performance he did on Celebration Day, and he signed that. So, but I gotta tell you, then I thought it was on cloud nine till Heart performed right after the Led Zeppelin performance. And then he came and played a whole set with Heart, doing the Stair to Heaven, doing Casmer, doing Shadow of Evermore. He did all these tunes, and I'm already a big Heart fan, and Wilson's my favorite female singer of all time. And I've always liked it when I seen her many times do Zeppelin.
Cool.
But to see Jason Bottom behind the kit during her performance with Nancy and everything was one of the highlights. But yeah, so yeah, I had a chance to get Robert Plant, bandmate, to sign. I believe it was during the Carry the Fire tour. I'm not sure, but at Massey Hall in Toronto, he's standing there 20 feet. His bandmate signed, and we're all kind of like, Robert, and he kind of like selective here and not really listen to that. But I was like, I couldn't believe how close I was to my favorite, one of my favorite singers of all time. But anyway, thank you very much for letting me share my
coming on
Zeppelin.
tonight, Rick. Hopefully we'll get you on in the future on another subject down the road.
I would love that. I would love that. But let me share something that Pete taught me. I already had this one, but Pete recommended one of his shows, Why the Giant Walked the Earth. If you haven't read that, it's a must read.
Okay.
Another thing I'd like to share is Led Zeppelin, all the songs, everything you want to know about the origin of it. It's very, very
Nice.
depth, and you got to be a Zepp freak to want to digest it all. I read it 3 times. Then you got to get the book Led Zeppelin by Led Zeppelin. It's a really, basically a photo biography, and they did a good job of telling the story, pretty much all the positive things, right? And last but not least, I bought myself a Christmas present after, spoiling everybody else. I had to get the latest Jimmy Page one, which is not a cheap book, but it definitely deep. Like it covers his whole anthology from his heydays of the session musician right up to the present age. So I recommend that by all means.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I almost forgot. I didn't do my top 3 albums. I'm going to do that real quick before we say goodbye to everyone and go around. And my number 3 is Zeppelin 4. Everybody's discussed the album, so I'm just going to throw them up. Zeppelin 2 is number 2. I'm doing it fast. Zeppelin 1 is number 1. I'm a little here with this background. I'm like, I disappear in it. I come out. Tripadelic. And my honorable mention is I love the song Remains the Same. Where is it? It's in here somewhere. There it is. You can kind of see it. This is why Pete doesn't use backdrops. But cool. And Dave, you got anything to finish up with tonight? Or Pete or Basil or
Yeah, I can add something if you want. I think I think the reason why Led Zeppelin was so successful is there's 2 factors that play into their success. The one thing is that they gave each other room musically to explore. So you had, this 4-piece of all immensely talented players, but I don't think there was any restrictions on their imagination with each other. So they gave themselves and each other room to really experiment with their instruments. And I think it's just, I think the only way you can really describe it is it's like a perfect storm musically, because Jimmy Page is obviously a musical genius, and it just, his presence on stage alone, he's got like he's a guitar god. You know what I mean? When you see people like Freddie Mercury is another guy who's just, when you see him on stage, he commands the stage, he owns it. And you get somebody like John, and I mean, they're all just so exceptional at what they do. And even like with Bonham, there's a lot to be said about, like, was he a technical player? The thing with Bonham was that he wasn't the first rock drummer, obviously, but what's interesting about Bonham was that he took from Bernard Purdy, and he took from Joe Morello. Joe Morello with the Dave Brubeck quartet, jazz, was doing hand solos in the 50s, so and he listened to all that stuff. So he took all these elements of just all these different styles of playing and just put it in Zeppelin, and he was given the room to kind of to move that along. So and also too, I think there's probably a cultural reason why Led Zeppelin was so successful. I mean, the first album was 69, but you got to figure in 1970, the Beatles broke up. Janis Joplin died. Jim Morrison died, in 71, so you had a real, like, kind of open space where there was a break from the, kind of peace and love thing of the 60s that I think was kind of wore out its welcome a little bit. And I think socially and culturally, people were ready for something with a little bit more bite to it. Music was getting heavier. So I think you had this, I mean, other than just the mere exposure effect, you had this distinctive break between the late 60s and the early 70s and throughout the 70s, where people were just ready for something different. And I think with the circumstances, like I said, like the Beatles breaking up and Jim Morrison dying, and it kind of gave them the space to dominate musically, I mean, there was a lot of other great stuff going on in the 70s, Deep Purple, Sabbath,
of course.
But I think that probably plays a part in it, maybe. So that's it.
I remember the discussions in high school, Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin, and those were two that always went back and forth. And don't forget Deep Purple, definitely. Yeah, cool.
Is
one of my
living legend.
Very well put, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the show tonight. It was an honor to have your time, give us some time tonight, and hopefully we can get you back on for something else down the road. We do these discussions all the time, and maybe even Pete will have you on the Sea of Tranquility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basil, anything you want to wrap up down there in Colorado? Are you hanging out with the spirit of John Denver there, maybe?
No, it was fun hanging out with you guys, and it was nice meeting some fellow Zepp heads over here. Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you. And Pete Pardo, what do you got coming up on your channel? Anything we can look forward to?
Let's see, for all you metal fans, doing a show with Rich Catino on Sunday. We're going to give our top 10 songs of Armored Saint. So that's coming up. We got Rick's fellow Canadian Martin Popoff on the show tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about some bands where if you go and buy their greatest hit set, probably you don't need any other albums besides that. So that's a fun show coming up tomorrow. And I just had one quick thing I wanted to say about Zeppelin to kind of wrap up tonight. So Rick was holding up that Mick Wall book, Led Zeppelin When Giants Walk the Earth, which is a great Zeppelin biography. But I want to kind of hit on the title of the book, When Giants Walk the Earth. Besides for the music, one of the things that was always so great about Led Zeppelin is they were larger than life. They were true rock stars. And I think we love the music, but we love them as the larger than life musicians that they were, and they were true giants. Rock star, the term rock star doesn't get tossed around much these days anymore, but back in the 70s, we had some true rock stars, and they were none bigger than Led Zeppelin.
Right on.
Yeah. Agreed.
The mystery of it back then too, right? I think that was Peter Grant.
Peter Grant, yeah.
A little mystery to them,
And they were the king of the underground FM radio, which didn't have to worry about playing single. They play longer tracks, and they were the kings of that. But I think Pete mentioned it's very important because when you talk about Elvis, that got a lot of people who want to sing rock and roll and be an entertainer. The Beatles made people want to write those songs and form a band. Led Zeppelin wants you to be a rock star. You wanted to come there with your chops up there. And it was like there's a good video on the Atlantic record, and Mick Jagger described about the advance payment they gave for Led Zeppelin's first album was that band was perfect on paper. You got a great singer, you got a great drummer, great guitar player, Jones, as you mentioned, and he's kind of the underrated player on that band. I mean, that player, he does so many wonderful things. But just the fact that these people are all like superheroes in their own music. Talk about Fantastic Four for a comic book geezer over there. But seriously, they come to the table fully armed with so much talent, and to think that formula worked, a lot of bands wanted to be like Led Zeppelin or rock star, just like once upon a time, people wanted to be Elvis or Beatles. Led Zeppelin made everybody want to be that rock star.
Zeppelin had their own jet. They had all the groupies. They were throwing sharks out and TVs out of windows of hotel rooms. They were crashing cars. I mean, they were doing it all. They were like larger than life.
Awesome. Very well put, guys, and thanks for everyone to come on. Deep Purple had a jet too, you Deep Purple fans out there. So
that's right.
Deep Purple was living pretty large back then, and Deep Purple is a little bit more forgotten than Zeppelin was, I think, at times. In 2020 or 2021, whatever we're in now, you look back, and you don't hear as many stories about Deep Purple as you do about Zeppelin and Sabbath. But,
Deep Purple were arguably as big as Zeppelin in probably 73, 74, and maybe 75.
Yeah.
Definitely 73, 74.
Well,
the only reason why that happened because the lineup changes, and some people like Led Zeppelin, as you mentioned, is the iconic lineup where you got to show up, and it's all about those people, and that's why they like. I'll just ask a quick question: how many people feel glad that they didn't renew without John Bonham? How many people think they did the right thing, or how many people like fans like us are? Wow, I do want to see him play again. Like, think about it. Some people gave the Who the pass, right? The Who.
It happens.
You know, how many people would have forgave Zeppelin for doing that? You know, it's hard to say. Like, for example, Neil and Rush, nobody wants him to continue without Neil. So.
And there's talk of Alex and Getty doing some music now, which is cool. But anyhow, I'm going to wrap this episode up. We've got some upcoming shows on the Rock Fantasy Files. Next Tuesday, we're going to cover all things Manowar, and we will have Ross the Boss on the show. And next Wednesday, we're going to go after the Ozzy Osbourne era in Black Sabbath, and we're going to talk about our favorite songs. And I'll be on Pete's show on Monday night, the Sea of Tranquility, Hudson Valley Squares, and we're going to be talking about special guest appearances in bands, and we're going to be working on some other episodes. Me and Robin have got some ideas, and John McAtee, who's a regular in the show, we're going to be touching. We're going to do a Metallica show in February, and I want to do an Iron Maiden 40th anniversary for Killers. So got some things on the works, and of course we're trying to interview some bands and doing some releases. We just did an interview with Last Pharaoh, a Hudson Valley power metal band, last night, and that just came up on the channel today. So thank you. Please hit subscribe and take a second to do that. Like, tell us your favorite Led Zeppelin stories and albums. And thank you, everyone. And rock on, like David Essex. And this is my new logo. I got him behind me, see? And look, I can jump back and forth, and I can disappear if I want. I'm going to do this on Monday night so I can hide from Butch Jones if I have to. All right, guys.
Nice meeting you, everybody.